Now, I want to bring us back to the socioeconomic for just a moment. The impacts of climate change are not equal opportunity, and that's part of the huge arguments that we hear when the convention meets. There are people who are going to suffer much more than others. And in the developing world, 1 in 19 people are going to experience a disaster. 1 in 19. The poor are those that are the most dependent on the natural resource base. Bottom line. Women are more vulnerable, and I tend to focus here, women are less represented in the global dialogues. No matter what walk of life you're in, they're less represented. We have a lot of work to do on the socioeconomic side. Livestock-based livelihoods are not just a great picture of all kinds of livestock from all over the world with their pastoralists with them. And that's just to show that these are the people that are dependent on it. There are a number of socioeconomic issues that are keeping us from moving grazing lands management forward. Transit routes are shrinking. There's land that's being privatized. We're losing this capacity to actually move the animals where we need to move them. There are a lot of issues around land tenure. Competition for other land uses, biofuels, you know the arguments, or you're hearing about them more and more, is like, what's the best land use that is also good for food security? Lack of services for a lot of our nomadic people in terms of education and health care, and they are, in fact, the most marginalized. And so there's really a lack of voice for their needs and priorities to be at the table. But that is clearly changing, thankfully. There are a lot more pastoralists that are showing up in international venues to say what's going on. Now, just a couple of examples. I want to talk about communications. I think all of us belong to various networks, and these are fantastic. We need to make sure our networks are talking to one another. In Kenya, we have a Kenya Livestock Working Group. It's everybody in the value chain. It's the wildlife people, the land management people, the Ministry of Ag, Ministry of Environment, the researchers, the pastoralists, the slaughterhouses, et cetera, et cetera. And they've actually developed this beautiful pastoralist field school, which is the community built it, and they painted the pictures. It doesn't have to be for people who are literate. And it shows you everything from how to manage the land to how to talk about policy. And it's done in a manyata, in sort of a native household way. So it's a really comfortable space. And then the donors showed up, and they found it, and they said, this is fantastic. Who paid for this? And the community said, we did. And now they're replicating it. So those are the kind of things that can happen. It's an if you build it, they will come moment. But this is a fantastic working group, because when it first met about 5 years ago, they'd never talked to each other across the value chain. They'd never met each other. And now they're talking about what do we need to do. Now, about 5 years ago, 3 years ago, Andrew, help me out here, 2008, 3 years ago, Grassland Carbon Working Group. We had a meeting here in New Mexico, Holistic Management, and the USDA hosted it, and we started this Grassland Carbon Working Group. I know, Peter, you were there, and others in the room. And now we had a second meeting in FAO and brought in a whole other group, and it's scientists, practitioners, NGOs, et cetera, but everybody who's interested in the topic. FAO said, we'll start the listserv, we'll put up the website, and now what we're trying to do is really try to make this a go-to source for grasslands carbon information. And we'll share the website on the wiki, and please do join the listserv, and please do use the information and give information to it. So I have a few take-home messages. One is, let's keep food security and poverty alleviation in front of us at all times. I think we got excited about carbon and carbon credits and carbon money, and we went running over in this direction. And we need to remember it's about people's livelihoods. But you hear about climate-smart agriculture now. Another group of people are saying, let's just call it climate-smart development. Let's keep it as that. So this is a means. And livestock are clearly irreplaceable in terms of livelihoods, but as well as managing lands. Well-managed grazing lands are critical for mitigation. We know that. The associated co-benefits, and I love, Courtney, another fancy word for food, But in this case, let's look at the co-benefits as being all those things: soil organic matter, productivity, water capture and retention, biological diversity, that are vital for adaptation. We can manage for all of this. Just one word about what's getting ready to happen at the end of this month. In the first part of December, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is meeting in Cancun. Last year, they met in Copenhagen, and we all ran around with buttons that said, "No ag, no deal, no ag, no deal." We've got to keep doing all the work on the ground, and that was the best thing that came out of Copenhagen, is there were 60,000 people like you that said, "We're going to make it happen." The least developed countries are saying, we have to get agriculture into this agenda because it's the backbone of our economies, food security, and livelihoods. And agriculture has really moved up the agenda. And so, to be honest with you, if we get this technical body figured out this next time, we will have made huge headway. But absolutely, we've got to just keep working, no matter what happens with the conventions. Thank you so much for the time.